Greetings, Benjamin J. from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, this is that 999 that arrived today. 12 bucks on eBay, in really decent shape. And like so many of them before it, the E unit has failed. And it was running actually quite well. And it suddenly jumped into reverse. Went back to forward, jumped into reverse again, and stayed there. And I checked the E unit, the coil has gone out. It's not working at all. So again, from bad storage, like I said, this one had been stored in an attic. So it had been baking for probably 50, 60 years. There isn't much runtime, and this is a fairly early locomotive. So it's been sitting in a box very much for the last, I don't know, 55, 60 years, something like that. Anyway, the E unit failed. It ran reverse only. So I bypassed the E unit, which actually made a substantial difference in how the locomotive runs. As you see, the thing just purrs. It just runs splendidly. So the weak spot in the Marx motor is the E unit. And it's not the E unit mechanics itself. It's the way these locomotives have been stored for decades. And if you keep these temperature controlled, the E unit and the motor will run virtually forever. It's when these things are neglected for months, and months turns into years, years turns into decades. Like I said, this thing has been sitting in a box someplace for 50 years, perhaps longer than that. There's almost no wear on it. And this is circa 1948, 1950, something like that. So it's a fairly early 999 in remarkably good condition considering its age. And the problem, of course, with them is not the locomotive or the E unit. It's the storage, the way they've been stored forever. And when you get them running, things just begin to go wrong. And that's why I make it a point when I get a new locomotive, I run it every single day for several days. And run it, let it stop, run it, put it aside, put it back on the rail, run it some more, just to see what's going to happen. And invariably, if something's going to go wrong, it usually goes wrong within the first few hours of running these locomotives. And it's important that you do that, because there would be nothing worse, in my opinion, I think, getting one of these things running really well, putting it up on the shelf, and going to get it to run it and find out that it had a problem that you didn't discover. So that's the point of running these things. And I run them for hours just to make sure that they're going to continue running. And in the process of doing that, invariably, if there's a problem with the E unit, it fails because it's being used again. And like I said, these things have sat unused for decades. Anyway, like I said, it was running fine going forward. It slammed into reverse. It went forward again, slammed into reverse, and stuck in reverse. So obviously the coil was getting intermittent voltage, and I'm thinking that very likely a wire has probably rusted or vibrated in half. Now this is all steel wire, and that's one of the problems with these motors, of course, is that if they're stored badly, the first thing that's going to go are these small miniaturized moving parts, especially ones that are contacts, like in the E unit. And eventually it will fail. Not all of them, but remember, I'm buying the cheapest ones I can find, and those are usually the ones that have been stored the longest and run the least. But as you see, this thing is just absolutely purring. It just runs splendidly. So anyway, I'll probably just leave it forward only. I actually really dislike these locomotives starting in reverse. But it runs well, and now that we've bypassed the E unit, we're getting direct track power to the motor itself. So substantially more power. And they just run extremely well. In fact, all of these motors will run better once you've bypassed the E unit. Anyway, I just want to do a follow-up video. Marx 999, definitely still worth the 12 bucks. As you can see, it runs absolutely perfectly. Has a lot of power. It has almost no runtime at all. Unfortunately, it just sat in a box almost as long as I have been alive. So a long time to sit there. And then a matter of a few minutes, a few drops of oil, and it's up and running. And like I said, I run them just to see what is going to happen. If something's going to fail, it's going to fail while it's running. So the E-unit did fail, but it's a really simple fix. It only takes 5 minutes to do this bypass, and you're up and running. It runs forward only, but it runs really, really well. So anyway, it was definitely worth the money, and always interesting to get a new locomotive, and it's always interesting to see how they're going to run and what problems are going to develop. Anyway, just want to do a follow-up on this. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.